Put the palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. Thanks for showing up. Why show up? Why show up here?
Sangha.
Sangha? What does that mean for those who don't know what that is?
To be with other people that are, at least in some ways, like-minded. For sure.
Yeah. Well,
this is the strength of the meditation.
Wonderful, thank you. No wrong answers, just opportunities to kind of explore and reflect. Why show up? Yeah.
Good way to end the day.
Good way to end the day.
To be the present moment.
Present moment.
To let go.
To let go of what? Everything?
The bad.
Yeah, just the bad. What else?
To learn something.
To learn something. I just repeat things for those joining virtually in case you wanted to know.
To make space.
Say again?
To make space.
To make space. Yeah. Anybody else?
Nothing else to do.
There is nothing else to do. She said nothing else to do. I mean, that's why I keep showing up, you know. I keep hoping someday you'll all figure something else to do and then I won't have to show up anymore. But here we are. I think, yeah, in the back.
Peace of mind reminds me to practice meditation.
Say that again? Sorry.
Peace of mind.
Peace of mind and to practice daily. Yeah.
I come to do something for me. I like here, I like how I feel when I leave here, I come to do something for me.
Yeah. Anyone else? It's good.
Sanity.
Sanity.
Find my inner peace.
Find your inner peace. Yeah, it's good for even, you know, for those who didn't share, often, you know, I'll ask that question just to kind of create an opportunity for people to explore in their own minds. Like, okay, why do I keep showing up? Whether we realize it or not, there are reasons that we end up at places like this, you know, any sort of meditation place, yoga space, spiritual practice, whatever it is. There's reasons that we do all of that. And so it's important every once in a while to kind of stop and just pause a little bit and reflect on, you know, why? What's going on? Why do I keep showing up? What am I struggling with? What are my challenges? What are my difficulties? What drives me? What motivates me? To keep showing up. And I'll never forget, this was, I guess 19 years ago, and when I arrived at the monastery in Taiwan, the nun, and I'm still convinced, that, not even sure if she's real or not, like I hadn't slept in probably 48 hours, and so I'm not sure if she was real or not, but in my mind, this whole conversation happened the moment I got there, and she asked me what I was doing there, and I shared some thoughts, and she said, never forget the original intention of why you showed up. And to this day, I am reminded of that every single day in my practice, because whatever it was that led you to a space like this, don't forget that. You can forget the space. I don't care about the space. But don't forget what led you to come to something like this. Because that, whatever it is that's in you, is what we want to come back to when we start to think things are really good, right? We'll see people for a while and things are going well, and they're like, everything's good in my life, you know? And then we all know when things are going well, they come crashing down. And so the practice is to continue to remember that original motivation, inspiration that created space for you to say, hey, I need to continue to create time for me, to give myself time and space, because life does get busy. I mean, unless you got nothing else to do, but life can get busy for some. So keep that intention in mind. To those joining virtually, welcome. Feel free if you want to say hello or share any thoughts there as to why you keep showing up. So we'll start with a meditation practice. A couple things to tell you for those who are maybe here for the first time or sitting for the first time. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. You're not going to think nothing. You're not going to empty your mind. It's not going to go blank. You're going to continue to have thoughts. Your mind will continue to race. I'll say things periodically to either wake you up because you've fallen into a deep sleep, which isn't the end of the world, or just remind you to come back to present moment. Right? Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, often it helps sliding to the front foot, pushing the stomach forward, allows the back to straighten. Same thing if you're on a bench or chair, however you're seated, just trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders. Hands can be on the knees or lap. If you need to move, simply move. Doesn't make you a bad meditator, it just means you need to move. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. Eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgment from your practice. Just sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, just sitting, breathing. With the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And when ready, slowly open the eyes. Slowly beginning to move. And most important, practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you'd prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how you sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around you, or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind, and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awaken. He was a human being, no different than any one of us. He began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from, what you believe in, and where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. That's what we get. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It's direct perception into the present moment. If your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, meditation isn't going to fix that. It will help you become aware of why your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, so you can begin to make changes in your life. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else you encounter every moment of your life. And that's it. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, hoping they do this, hoping they do that, wishing they would do this, wishing they would do that, we spend so much time trying to fix and change and control others. This practice is working on yourself and your response to others. Because if you haven't figured it out by now, others are never going to do what you want them to do. I mean, you can keep trying. Good luck with that. You know? I mean, how easy is it for people to get you to do what they want you to do? But for some reason, we think we can get others to do what we want them to do. I mean, I get it. You're all here. Everyone here is calm and quiet and peaceful, and the problems are with everybody who's not in this room. I understand that completely, right? But it's quite possible that we may have something to do with the conflict and chaos that's around us. Just quite possibly. Quite possibly someone is at another meditation practice, yoga practice, therapy, whatever you want to call it, somewhere else because of the ones in this room. We often think that we're here because of others. You know? Others are where they are possibly because of us. And so part of this practice, or all of this practice really, is just holding up a mirror, and it's a reflection back on ourselves. What do we think? What do we say? And what do we do? That is the essence of Buddhist teachings. For 2,500 years, it has never changed. What do we think? What do we say? And what do we do? And how does that impact our lives and the lives of those around us? And that's all we do, day in and day out. It's a lot of fun. So with that, I'll pause. For me, I really just prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. To those who are joining virtually, again, welcome. Glad you're here. Thanks for showing up. Feel free. There's a chat box on your screen. Say hello. If you have any questions, you can put them in the box, and I'll do my best to respond. But we'll use the rest of our brief time this evening, and I'll open up to questions.
How many people joined via computer?
How many people joined by the computer? This is really funny. So on Monday nights, we have a rotation of people who lead, and this is a few months ago. And Mark, it was his first time leading. And usually the first time somebody leads, we don't put the camera in their face because they're already paranoid with the people looking at them, let alone the millions of followers, as I always say. And so he sat down, and I think it was the second time leading, and he looked down at this thing, and he saw 2.28 thousand or something like that, right? So he thought that there were like 28,000 people watching him at that moment, That's the number of subscribers, and then he looked up to the top number, and it said like 6. He was really disappointed when we told him there were only like 6 people watching him, and it wasn't 28,000. Yeah. But I don't know. There are 16 people at this moment. Yes. Oh, we just lost 2 of them. Apparently they didn't like being called out. I'm actually kind of blown away at this too. I mean, I've recorded my stuff for years, but never really paid attention to it. It would just get archived, and I don't even know if I die, it'll just all be on my computer somewhere. But then we started doing this, and then when the pandemic hit, obviously, everything went virtual. We were closed 18 months, and so we had to connect with the Sangha, with the community through these, through technology, and it became a really beautiful resource to where now it's, and we end up with like 30,000 hours a month that are watched, archived on the YouTube channel. It's pretty crazy how many people watch them. I'm actually kind of shocked. Yeah.
Well, it comes to one handy when you're out of town.
Yes, when you're out of town. We built it just for you when you're out of town. Other questions? Yeah.
Can you speak to righteous anger and whether or not anger is ever justified?
Righteous anger. Yes, I can. Only because I spent a majority of my life convincing myself that I had righteous anger, And the second part to your question, or comment, really was, if I heard you correctly, and whether or not anger is ever justified, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So, fundamental, hate to use that word in a place like this, but fundamental core Buddhist teaching, as I'm sure you know, but for those who maybe don't know, the first thing the Buddha taught is life is filled with dukkha. It translates to suffering. It's a really poor translation. Discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction, feeling unstable, things that just don't seem right is the first noble truth, right? And it's like hating mayonnaise. You order a sandwich, you got mayonnaise on it. Right? The temperature's not right, the traffic's not right. This is dukkha. We experience these things every single day. You didn't get enough pumps of caramel in your latte or whatever it is. Things that are not going to end your life, but all day long for our entire lives, these things happen. The second noble truth is the cause. What is the reason that this suffering exists? And the Buddha taught what's known as the 3 poisons: greed, anger, and ignorance. Right? So the practice to overcome greed is generosity, giving time, attention, heart, smile, a hug, whatever. The practice of overcoming anger is the practice of compassion. And the practice of overcoming ignorance is wisdom. Still not addressing your question. I just wanted to give it some foundation for those who are new. Right? So the question is, when is anger justified? Now, I always bring up the teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh around this topic because very often, especially for those who might be newer to Buddhism, may think that like Buddhists just kind of kick back and do nothing and watch the world burn because it's on fire right now, regardless of what you think or what you believe, regardless of what sides of whatever you sit on. You know, people have been killing each other for thousands of years, and they're going to continue to kill each other for thousands of years. And in all of that, each person, each side, each in a relationship, in a country, in a world, in a city, in a community, in a house, everyone's stuck on thinking that they're what? Right. And when we experience moments where we think us being right is challenged, we get angry. And the righteousness tends to come in. I'm not putting words in your mouth. This is just, it's a question I've heard for 20 years. The righteousness tends to come in when we are absolutely convinced that we are right. And there's no possibility for any other solutions or ways of being. And so we just strengthen our conviction around being right, which strengthens the anger, which then allows us to intellectually justify it and say it's righteous. I mean, I've heard this for 1,000 times, literally. I love those two words together because righteous is like, what does righteous even mean? I don't even know what the word means. It's just a feeling. What does it mean? Anyone know? Like, I'm serious. Like, what?
Justified.
Justified? What else?
Certain.
Certain? What else? Righteous. I always think, when I hear righteous, I think of like heavenly, like godly, like it's this,
Like approved.
approved. And then we put that next to the word anger. So our anger has been approved. By whom? By all the people that think you're right. Most importantly, us. Now, Thich Nhat Hanh, coming back to my original thought, really made popular the phrase engaged Buddhism. And Buddhist practice, as I mentioned, is not being a doormat and just sitting around watching things go on. To me, Buddhist practice is incredibly aggressive, but aggressive with compassion, not anger. It's incredibly aggressive, but aggressive with generosity, not greed. It is having the ability to recognize where what we justify or attempt to justify as anger, it's recognizing how that anger can really cloud what we do. Meaning, you ever been angry?
No.
Never, right on.
Not yet.
That's why you're in the front row, Yeah. When we're angry, we're suffering and we do things that harm ourselves and others. So when we observe things that occur that are causing harm to themselves and others, they're also coming from this place of anger. And so we often think that if we add more anger to it, that's going to fuel us and make us change. What the world needs is not more anger, not justified, approved, righteous anger, but actually compassion and love and understanding. So when there are things going on that we truly, to our heart, disagree with, disapprove of, we can try to understand, why did they feel that way? Why do they think that way? Why do they do that? Because if I have love and compassion for those who are torturing others, then maybe I can understand and work with that. But if I have nothing but anger and hatred towards them, then am I not bringing in the same level of anger and hatred that I think they are bringing into situations? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Really difficult to do. Martin Luther King, I always say this, but he nominated Thich Nhat Hanh for the Nobel Peace Prize for his work around social justice. And they fought and walked and marched alongside each other, but not with anger, with love. So I want to be very careful when I say that there isn't such a thing as righteous anger or justified anger, because I don't want it to sound as if that means that things that happen in our world are okay. But I think the heart and mind behind our perception of something should never come from anger but love. And then I believe we can create change. Yeah.
I've heard people describe anger as a signal to ourselves that a boundary has been crossed, where we can use the rising of anger in ourselves to recognize that something isn't right.
Yeah.
And so that would then lead you to do something. And to think of it through a Buddhist lens, you would do that thing with love and compassion as opposed to striking back using anger. But to use it as a signpost rather than as a method of operation.
Yeah. Much better response than what I said. Yeah. And I think that reminded me again of another Thich Nhat Hanh book called An's Anger. And it's a children's book. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's a children's book, and it shows the anger is like this mean plant. And I hate to spoiler alert, but it's transforming the anger into a beautiful flower, and what that flower can then, how that flower can then impact those around it. Yeah, but I like that. I've never heard that anger is really a kind of a signal to let you know, hey, your boundaries are being crossed, and why? What does that mean? Yeah.
And how would you define the difference between anger and aggression? You said that Buddhism is an aggressive, being aggressively compassive and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's hard when you get into semantics. The question is, how would I define the difference between anger and aggression? I just think of, for me, and this is a very personal thing, I'm just a passionate, aggressive dude. But instead of beating the shit out of people, I try to make people peaceful, help them find peace and happiness and do good things. But there's that same aggression, but it's not coming from anger and hatred, it's coming from a place of love and compassion. But it's still it's just from the moment I wake up to the moment I sleep, that's what drives me. I don't think there's time to just sit around and say everything's okay. The Dogen example is a Zen master lived from 1200 to 1253, and he would say practice, right? He's referring to Buddhism, meditation, loving kindness, compassion, joy, all these kind of key buzzwords we talk about in Buddhism. He says practice all of that as if your hair is on fire, right? I don't worry about that anymore. You still got some pretty hair, right? If that hair was on fire, you wouldn't just be like, oh, my hair's on fire. I'm gonna sit and eat popcorn for another 2 hours. You would be looking for somewhere very quickly to put out that fire. And I use that as a metaphor for all the suffering that exists in our community, our local community, in this room, in the community, in the city, in the state, country, and around the world. There's so much suffering. And so I think that you can have aggression, but not in it. Aggression doesn't have to be driven by or fueled by anger. It can be driven and fueled by love and compassion for all beings. That's what I believe. Yeah.
When my youngest son was 16, 3 years ago, we went on vacation. It turned out that I put it together. It was a mistake in that he criticized everything that I did. But my point is that afterwards, I paid attention to the things that he had, the things that had happened that made me very angry. And I looked at myself through a mirror, essentially, and said, I'm being too sensitive to these issues. Why am I getting so angry? And then I worked on those things. I wish I started doing that earlier.
Sure.
But it was a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, those, the moments where we can reflect are really, they're difficult, they're painful. It's really hard to swallow when people bring that, to our kind of, our mind, especially when it's, a kid. But great opportunities to learn and grow. Yeah. What else?
I have.
Go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
When you were talking about aggression, when it's coming from a place of anger, it does feel like aggression to me. Whereas when it comes from a place of love and compassion, it feels like assertiveness. And I realize that's kind of semantics.
Totally.
But it's as a woman, I often have this, aggressive bitch kind of thing if you step up the plate. And that feels very different than being called, whoa, you're being so assertive.
Yeah.
And I mean, to me, they're both wanting something to change.
Yeah, definitely. And sorry, go ahead.
It is, to me, that coming from compassion or anger. And it really feels differently, energetically. So, just an observation.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we all will relate to those, like you said, semantics, to those words differently based on how those words have played out in our individual lives and experiences. Yeah, definitely. There was a comment here. Going back to the beginning. I'll never forget why I showed up back in 2014 and heard the words, think good thoughts, speak good words, do good deeds. These words never left me. Yeah. Thanks, Joe. Glad you're still showing up. What else? Thoughts, questions?
Back to anger.
Yeah. It's a good one.
If someone's angry at you,
Yeah.
and you're just like, I don't care, like the apathy kind of sets in, and you're like removing yourself, and I was like, is this a Buddhist thing to be like walking away and just saying I'm not engaging, or is that like a very avoidant thing to be like, oh, this isn't my problem?
Yeah, no, great question, and really to point that out, again, for a million scenarios, there's a million different responses or situations, obviously. And to start, well, let me go this route. Years ago, I have a good friend, and he'd been practicing Buddhism for a long time, and his girlfriend, it was newer to her, and she talked about how when they would get into an argument, he would say things like, well, I'm Buddhist, I don't argue. And that's just that's just shit, Like I don't, again, this is obviously my interpretation of Buddhist teachings. Buddhist teachings don't mean that you just kind of like ignore. And if someone is upset, to your question, if someone is upset or angry at you, there's no Buddhist teaching that says, sorry, I'm Buddhist, that's your mess. To me, the Buddhist teachings that I would take from loving kindness and compassion for the other individual, if you're upset, if you're angry at me, you're hurting. And there's a very high probability, if you're angry or upset at me, that I had something to do with that. So while it might be, and don't take this, take it however you want, but it is your anger. Your anger is your anger. Just like your happiness is your happiness. I don't own that. You own that. But I have to recognize what role did I play in that. And whether I know and love you or you're an absolute stranger, I should absolutely care about your anger and want to listen to your anger. Not to convince, not to, defend myself, not to shift your view, but to actually understand, why are you angry? And I think when, from a Buddhist lens, when you can dialogue and communicate versus the arguing, which often is like, voices get loud, there's yelling, maybe throwing stuff, who knows. But I think if you can communicate and dialogue and listen and understand, and at the same time completely possibly disagree, to me that's a really beautiful practice. and important. But to just, apathy and just to be like, I'm Buddhist, doesn't matter, it doesn't work that way.
That's the easy way out.
Yeah, that's the easy way out. And there's nothing about Buddhist practice that is easy.
I was just thinking how hard it actually is to engage sometimes when you know someone's mad at you.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I remember, I tell the story often, as all my stories, but years ago there was a woman who was here and she showed up and it was like meditation was over and before I even asked for questions, and you've all been there at some point, the hand went up, It had been on her mind since the moment she walked in the door. And the question was, she was feeling terrible because her wife was upset with her. And her question was around how could she feel better because her wife was upset with her. It had nothing to do with her wife. It was all about her wanting to feel better. And I was like, well, wait a minute. I understand that you're coming to your little meditation thing to feel better, but is it possible that you did something to cause your wife to be angry at you? She definitely didn't want to hear that. But that was the truth. The truth was she did something that triggered the anger. And she wasn't concerned about unraveling that. She was concerned with how she felt in that moment, which was pretty terrible. Not from what she did, but from how she was being treated based on what she started. So, yeah. Again, I come back to the word engaged Buddhism, to engage in conversation, to engage when people are upset. But again, to engage not from that place of anger, but from maybe understanding. And still disagreeing. Yeah.
I was in Thailand, in Bangkok, and in a hotel, and I saw a very angry German businessman speaking English. It's verbally abusive, extremely abusive. I've never seen another human being handle such a situation with such aplomb. The woman behind the counter, she was impressive. She did not get angry, she did not react. She handled what he said and was very, very effective. It was the best example I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's really difficult to stay and to keep composure when people are really angry at you. And you also have to be careful of that because if you're someone screaming at you, it's like, I'm just listening to you. That can just kind of trigger them more. Again, a stranger in a hotel or something at the counter, customer service is different than, in a friendship, relationship type way. So yeah. There's a question here. Thanks as always. Do you have any thoughts on remaining while also directing energy skillfully to challenge the status quo? So the question is around practicing equanimity, but also skillfully challenging. I can't define what you mean by the status quo, but I think it's similar to specifically in situations where suffering or harm is being caused. It's really difficult because really similar to what I've been sharing, that in Buddhism we talk about the middle path, and there's a balance of recognizing when you see things where people are being harmed. There's no wisdom necessarily in just turning your back and walking away. There's wisdom in engaging and seeing what you can do. But if you are filled with heavy anger or whatever that emotion might be, and you try to engage, there's not usually going to be a good outcome. I mean, I grew up, 25 years of my life filled with anger and rage. And that never led to anything good. So the practice is to see and observe what's occurring and where pain is being caused and pain and harm is being done, and see how you can, and this is really your question, skillfully practice equanimity. And part of that is to understand that if I don't, as a practitioner, gain control of my emotions, If I don't practice equanimity, then I'm just going to make it worse. So to me, the motivation is I need to keep, and ultimately, not the answer, but I think the best way to do this is to cultivate a daily practice of meditation. The more you practice stilling the body, stilling the speech, stilling the mind, the more you practice settling into present moments, the easier it is when things arise. As I always talk about, we don't do meditation in Buddhist practice to be good at meditation in Buddhist practice. The world out there doesn't care about your meditation. They don't care about your Buddhist practice. It's going 1,000 miles an hour, and they will run you over if you're not careful. So we practice this so when we are put in situations that do require what you're asking about, we're able to see it no different than sitting in meditation. And just calmly and wisely say, how would I respond? How would I engage? How would I fight? So, meditation practice, I think, really is the key to your question. And then you bring that concentration and focus and clarity into every situation. Yeah, I mean, since we highlighted all our fans, now we're getting all these questions from them here. So one more here, and I'll close with this one. You mentioned that one of the poisons is ignorance. Could you please elaborate on what ignorance is and how to, I'm guessing you say, stop being ignorant? And how to not be ignorant. So, yeah, to kind of close with this thought, greed, anger, ignorance, the three poisons. Ignorance, it's, for me, the way I learned it was look at the word ignore. Okay, so when we're ignorant, we're ignoring reality, true nature of reality. What we have is our entire life is simply our perception of reality. That's not reality. We all see and perceive every single thing, every person, every place, absolutely differently. Many things we'll agree on, many things we'll disagree on, many things will be split. But we all could eat the same slice of pizza, and it would be something completely different for every one of us. And that's our world. There is in Buddhism what we call ultimate reality. That's life as it is. And then there's conventional reality, which is our interaction with the world and how we perceive it to be. So ignorance is ignoring reality and being stuck on our views. Again, Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching around nirvana. Nirvana is freedom from suffering. He says freedom from suffering, or nirvana, is freedom from views. Now, as I say that, everybody has a view on whether they agree with that or disagree with that, whether they like that or don't like that, and therefore, that's why you're all not in nirvana. Would you just wake up already? We're stuck to our views. And we're not going to abandon them. When I heard this teaching, I didn't think to myself, okay, I'm going to have no more views the rest of my life. For me, it's a practice, and I think this is one of the most enlightened teachings I ever saw. Freedom from views is to understand that my ignorance is thinking that every single one of my views is correct. I mean, how many of you roam around all day long and think all your views are wrong? You're like, yeah, I think this, I'm wrong. I think that, I'm such an idiot. Actually, I do that a lot, but we're stuck on our views. We spend our whole lives building, crafting, maintaining, holding, defending, fighting our views. And I'm not suggesting that we stop based on the theme of the questions that have come up tonight. But recognize that everybody else also has their views. So to me, ignorance is understanding that we're stuck in our views, we think we're right, and we're ignoring the possibility that there is any other option out there for anything else. And the question on to overcome ignorance is wisdom. So often people say, well, how do I practice wisdom? The Buddhist teaching around wisdom is it's beyond words. So I don't seek what is ultimate wisdom. But anyone in this room know when they do something really dumb? It's a lot of head shaking yes. Okay? Do those things less. It's not that difficult. Like for some reason we think that like we're going to attain this like fully awakened state by like, Tuesday of next week. just do less stupid stuff. I mean, really, 90% of the things that we do in our lives that are dumb, we could easily stop. 10%, and I'm just making these numbers up, it's really difficult. But so many of the things that we do that are just dumb. By dumb, I mean harmful, painful, gets us into trouble, filled from our ego and our attachments and our cravings and our desires. All the stuff that you did today that you know you should not have done. Just do less of that. That, by default, is cultivating more wisdom. Less dumb stuff equals greater wisdom. So, that's all I got. We're going to close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to Chanam during his time of rebirth, and to Nirmal and their family and friends who suffer at this time. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. All right, before you all head out, our Dharma Bum host Anna has some announcements for us all. Thanks, Anna.
Hello, everyone. I'm tonight's host, Anna. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They are simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone with addiction, and our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it, then bring it back whenever you are done with it. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. If a few people could stay to close and latch the windows, that would be helpful. Thank you for being here. We wish you well and hope to see you again.
And one last announcement.
No, that's okay.
One last announcement. Tomorrow night, we have a new class starting on Wednesdays. He'll do for 6 weeks. Bob, just a wonderful human. I've known him probably 20 years. He's going to do a mindfulness class, which really brings his background of Theravada, Vajrayana, and Zen Buddhism all together. So he'll be with us for 6 weeks. That'll be tomorrow night and every Wednesday moving forward for 6 weeks at 7 o'clock. So you're all welcome. So thanks all. Be well. Be safe.
Thank you.